Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for all the participants joining from different parts of the world. Welcome you all for today's webinar. I'm your host, Santosh Padmanabhan, Sales Director, Yash Technologies, coming with close to around 18 years experience within the industrial and manufacturing space. The topic of today's webinar is accelerating smart manufacturing with digital workflows. We will discuss how manufacturing companies can harness the power of a unified platform to unlock the benefits throughout the value chain and transform their service delivery with ServiceNow. Please do post your questions in the Q&A section during the session. I'm delighted to introduce our fellow panelists for today. I have Soma Sundaram from ServiceNow and Bharat from Yash Technologies. Soma, would you like to give a quick intro?
Thanks, Santosh. Yes. Hi, I am Soma Sundaram here. I'm a regional solutions architect based out of Singapore, and I do have around 17 plus years of experience in large scale transformation projects covering both IT and OT. And with ServiceNow, I'm actually one of the lead solution architect covering the entire manufacturing industry vertical. Over to you, Bharat.
Bharat, would you like to give a quick intro?
Yeah, this is Bharat Notekki. I'm working as Senior Practice Manager for ServiceNow at Yash.
Thank you, Bharat. Thank you both for giving the quick intro. On behalf of Yash Technologies, I welcome you all once again for today's webinar. Let us now move into our discussion and get this webinar started. And as a reminder for all the participants, please do post your questions during the sessions, and we will take it up at the end of the session and try to answer as many questions as possible. Now, as we move forward, Soma, as you know, most manufacturing companies have existed for centuries, but are being disrupted by many challenges and the new technologies which is coming across. I would like to know, what do you think the trends or the challenges which we need to be utmost paying attention to, and what are your thoughts around it?
Sure. Thanks, Santosh. So if you look at the global trends and challenges, right, we would like to just categorize into 3-4 different pillars. What you see here, start from the factory level, suppliers, channels, and customers, and lastly, the enterprise, right? But over in ServiceNow, actually, we do see all these crises or challenges as an opportunity, basically. Say, for example, take that for factory automation, right? With the rise of Industry 4.0, there is a great need for this IT-OT convergence, and that also brings up a lot of complexities in terms of the IT-OT convergence, and also that opens up the gateway for the cybersecurity issues, right? Because ultimately there was an air gap between IT and OT system. Now that's been the line become blurred, and this there is a potential hack happens within the manufacturing industry. And you all know, right? Actually, the manufacturing industry is the second largest industry that been just having become a prey for the attackers and the bad intruders would like to just take over and do malfunction across many of the examples like Stunex, Iranian nuclear power plant, or it could be Dragonfly, or it could be the Ukrainian the electrical grid that was being just attacked by Russians. So many of the examples I can pull it out. So cybersecurity is the key potential threat for this manufacturing industry. But looking at this angle of like how to prevent that and to how take countermeasures to just avoid such bad attackers scenarios. And that's how we can just have the exhaustive vulnerability response solutions in place. We can just talk it over in a little bit of time. And secondly, if you look at the suppliers scope, right? Because the supplier network needs to be like as much as track and traceable, and it needs to be in a very real time. But during the time of pandemic situation, we all know that supply chain industry was adversely affected. One example I could just bring out is like there is a huge shortage for the semiconductor chip, basically, and that impacts not only the smartphone industry, but also the automotive industry, plus the utilities industry that produces a lot of the smart TVs, fridges, and all the smart city, the smart IoT, the items, everything. So that becomes actually a bigger impact on the manufacturing industry. But how we can use that supply chain exception management, supply chain lifecycle management to cover all these exceptions that can be covered with supply chain, the portfolio of solutions. And thirdly, looking at the channels and customers, right now the trend is actually, it's not good to like sell a product, basically. It is something like selling a product as a service, basically. What's the product as a service means? Because take Tesla as a classic example, right? They are not actually selling a car basically, but on top of that, they are selling a value-added service in terms of like having the connected infotainment or a connected insurance, or it could be like connected the data just pull out from the different traffic light controllers to understand about the traffic situation. All these things actually becomes very much resonates for any customer that they're using this product, and that is how the trend actually is going on now, right? And lastly, how that the enterprise service actually has been become a victim of all that the net zero targets and reduce the carbon footprints and everything, because right, the sustainability is one of the great the pain point that every company that has to like undergo some regulations from the government that they are pressing at so much, right? So that's how this 4 key pillars has been just expanded, and ServiceNow being at the fulcrum of the wheel, how that can balance all this ecosystem of these entities and managing it well using our industry value chain. And I'll touch upon that later on. And this is our take. And Bharat, so what's your perception of seeing from the Yash lens? Can you please share that a little bit?
Yeah, so let me take this. So Yash is a digital engineering company with presence in 40 plus locations, right? So it's we have been in this industry from quite a long time. In last 26 years, we have been engaged with companies across various industries, like whether it is on manufacturing, mining, chemical, process, agrotech, healthcare, and life science segments, right? So as for several of our customers, we've been a partner of choice as part of their digital transformation journey. Yash brings the unique positioning of being a consulting and a technology implementation partner, where we bring our experiences around ERP integration and the digital services combined together. And the digital services cutting across IoT, cloud, AI, ML, data analytics space, augmented reality, cybersecurity, and today we are talking about even metaverse. So especially within the manufacturing space, we work closely with our customers, solving some of the some part of business problem which revolves around their industry 4.0 journey, and closely on the sensor to cloud transformation roadmap, right? So we have been involved, and as part of that, our entire technology offerings has been used to define the entire problem statement. We have been engaged in areas like predictive maintenance, operational effectiveness, and we are talking about demand forecasting, fleet management, autonomous delivery. These are some of the use cases where we have worked very closely with our customer, using technology as the enablement to solve the business problems. To let you know, one of the interesting business use case for a manufacturing customer was around where they wanted us to be involved in building a visibility for their shop floor to top floor integration, and look at the visibility of a key KPIs across 45 segments, which can cut across finance, manufacturing, and warehouse segments. So there have been several customers who have been coming in discussion with us as and transforming their entire journey. And I think with ServiceNow and a strategic partnership, which we are working together around the new products, which you're going to talk about in detail about on the OT and the IT side, how it can be integrated and solve some of the complex problems. I totally believe that we are moving, and Yash is taking this entire journey to a notch higher to bring a kind of enhanced experience for all our stakeholders across the enterprises. And I would like, as we move forward, I like Bharat to talk more in detail about what is our ServiceNow capabilities and how are we looking at it in collaboration with ServiceNow in solving some of these customer problems. Bharat, over to you. Would you like to take a quick overview on that?
Yes. Thank you, Santosh. Okay. Good morning, good evening, everyone who have joined across the globe. Let me give you an overview of Yash ServiceNow COE. Yash is a premier partner for ServiceNow for sales services and service provider area. Let me share interesting journey of Yash with ServiceNow. Yash has started his journey like a customer first. As part of Yash digital transformation journey, first we have implemented IT service management to address our IT service delivery challenges across our 40 plus delivery centers. And then recently we have released the strategic portfolio management to address our project portfolio, resource management, and output kind of issues. So overall, our COE is having 100 plus resources span across the globe. Our resources are having 150 plus mainline certifications spanning products like IT service management, operations management, security operations, integrated risk management, etc. So like Santosh mentioned, so we are offering our services like implementation, advisory and consulting, and support services for our customers across the globe. As on date, we were successfully able to execute 30 plus greenfield implementations for our various customers across the globe. So Yash is having its expertise into domains like manufacturing, BFSI, healthcare, life sciences, and energy and utilities, etc. Today, I would like to present you Yash ServiceNow solutions for manufacturing domain. If you look at the center of the screen, so these solutions are bundled under 5 buckets. I'll go left to right. First one is customer workflows, predominantly deals with customer-facing process. We have 3 major solution areas covering these workflows, which are built on top of base products of ServiceNow, like customer service management and field service management products. The second one is factory workflows, predominantly deals with workflows within the 4 walls of the factory. Of course, I'll be covering these 2 products shortly. Third one is supplier workflows, predominantly deals with how do we enhance collaboration between suppliers and manufacturers. Fourth one is workforce workflows, predominantly deals around employee and HR space. This covers how do we enhance the employee experiences across the factory, across the manufacturing enterprise. How do we engage and how do we support them on activities like onboarding, offboarding, time offs, healthcare and safety related questions, or there could be questions related to COVID, this new normal, etc. We have built our solutions on top of ServiceNow based products like HR service delivery, workspace service delivery, and safe workplace applications. And the next one, last but not the least, IT and shared service workflows. Of course, this is bread and butter of ServiceNow, which is ServiceNow is well known in the market for. Under IT workflows, we have solutions like IT service management, operations management, asset management to get the visibility of assets across the enterprise, secured operations, followed by integrated risk management. Of course, today I'm not going to spend much time on this. Let me go to the factory workflows. If you ask me, Bharat, don't you have manufacturing specific products from ServiceNow? Answer is yes. So first one is there are 2 products which are highlighted in red in the middle of the screen under factory workflows. First one is operational technology management. Predominantly deals around driving the visibility, security, and vulnerability issues of OT and IT assets across the factory. And second one is manufacturing connected workforce. This is a data model, basically leverages low-code, no-code platform capabilities of ServiceNow, bringing ServiceNow close to the factories to digitize their manufacturing factory business process. Let it be safety workflows, or let it be startup checklist, let it be changeovers to the incidents that may happen on the shop floor. Let it be inventory outages or maintenance outages or safety or security related outages, etc. It also helps organizations to track the incidents coming from various sources along with the trend analysis. So with this, if you closely look at all the 5 workflows which are flashing on the screen, they are helping enterprises. ServiceNow is helping the enterprise to build great experiences for all the stakeholders across the enterprise, not only limiting to the shop floor. So with this, I would like to pass on the floor to Soma. Soma, why don't you cover 2 major products under factory workflows: operational technology management and manufacturing connected workforce.
That's great. Thanks, Santosh and Bharat, for setting the stage of today's agenda, right? So what you see in this slide is basically what's the ServiceNow solution offering for the manufacturers, right? If you look at that ecosystem of that manufacturing industry, this is how the industry value chain looks like. Start with the design, when they would like to just introduce a new product with using that portfolio of new product introduction. And once they decided to just introduce this new product, how they source in the supplies from the inbound logistics team, from the many suppliers and vendors, to the manufacturing, the factory floor. And once that's been arrived at the raw materials and necessary, the auxiliary parts and all the accessories has been arrived at the manufacturing industry of factory floor, how they started to produce the goods in terms of like having the finished goods that needs to be shipped to the customer with all the supply chain network, be it could be a reseller or it could be a distributor or it could be channel partner, with all the connected tissue, how that the supply chain can be expanded well. And lastly, how that once it reaches to the doorstep of the customer, how that can be, as I mentioned before, like how we can servitize, provide the product as a service model in terms of like getting the customers, either it could be some sort of like defects, they have any complaints about the product, or it could be any warranties or guarantee, all these things actually how it can be tackled via the customer portal. All this industry value chain has been just under the hood of ServiceNow platform that can be very well tackled and managed, right? So looking at this, the stack over here, how that actually looks like, start from the technology excellence. It's all about like ITSM, ITOM, IT operations management. Maybe it could be any sort of like operational technology also. That's also part of this, the technology excellence. And employee experiences were actually for the manufacturing industry, that could be the middle office, back office, and front office. How do they engage their employees and get them productive, and also ensuring their safety and security are at the tip-top level, and that is no anomalies happen for any employees, right? So that's all about like employee experience. And process automation is where actually which we are going to touch about, like how we can have that automation enabled with the factory floor by having using the passive monitoring, discover all the OT assets across the OT and IT network within that factory landscape. How we can ingest the data towards ServiceNow and create a digital inventory of records in our CMDB. And lastly, about the sustainability part, which is where actually I touch upon like how efficiently or how sustainably we can just produce the product and can just, that could be environmental friendly. So this is about the nutshell of the industry value chain over here. And if you look at sorry, I don't have the control on the slides. Can you please provide me the control here? Okay, great. Okay, so before I just go deep dive about the operational technology, I would like to touch base on this, the platform of platforms slide. ServiceNow being a platform company, we would like to emphasize and capitalize on the platform capabilities as much as possible. And looking at this slide, right, actually, I can talk about Lauren more than 2-3 hours about for the slide, but considering the time, actually, I would like to scrutinize a bit and try to like condense it and make it more nutshell overview of the platform. So the ServiceNow platform, the Now platform, is built on 3 key principles, basically. First is like a single data model, single platform, and single architecture. What does it mean is like, when I talk about the single data model, you may all about know and aware about like the common service data model that is actually used as the key the design principle for the CMDB, the configuration management database. So in this case of common service data model, so whatever the data that has been stored in CMDB, that used as a transactional data and as used as a shared transaction across different modules of this platform, basically, right? So that's how it helps you to like have the bridge between from or transaction level from point A to or module A to module B, and that makes the life of easy for any consumers that using this platform, basically. So that is what actually the single data model. And look at this architecture. This architecture, based on this architecture, we develop all this the modules and the applications on top of this platform. And the core capabilities are something like the workflows, because if you look at the IT industry, the how that does it works, right? Based on the server request response cycle, right? The same request response cycle, take it as a sequential step and enable with workflow. The one-step process, which is an output, has been fed to the input as a next step. So that's become a sequential step of workflow. That's how the workflow enablement helps to easily understand and kick in the process from point A to point B to point C, right? So this is how actually the workflow can is the job of any process engine, right? And next one is the machine learning capability. The machine learning capability is basically like using the AIOps and exploit the functions of AIOps basically. For example, if take an factory floor, right? So there would be like hundreds of thousands of assets that's been spread across the factory landscape. And each one of that device or the asset basically churn out the data that could be at regular interval. And consider that hundreds of thousands of devices churn out the data at regular interval of 1 minute or 2 minute or 3 minute time. So that will be blasted with so many hundreds of thousands of millions of events basically. It's almost inhuman for any persona to just go and look at each one of the incident to look at the incident, like classify it, categorize it, prioritize it, and look at that the most severe incident, right? So that way, AIOps takes that the lead to like go and identify the severity of the incident and the severity of that the event basically, and try to categorize on its own. And even to some extent, it auto assign that incident to some of the persona who has already existing knowledge about that particular incident or the problem basically. So that's why AIOps play a vital role here within our platform. And again, the user experience basically. So if you look at this, basically all the communication and collaboration tools, right? It's almost all the communication tools like Slack, Microsoft Teams, or it could be maybe even using some sort of other collaboration tools, all can be integrated, and also RP engine and voice chatbot is actually taken the lead role, try to deflect the issues as much as possible and try to provide the self-service support and self-healing measures, right? And that's why the user experience is very one of the sustainable or probably the significant use case here for this platform, the capability. And try to like reuse the data as much as possible using the common service data model, as I mentioned before. And security and compliance is basically our DNA, right? So security is in our DNA in terms of like starts with the network security, how the data that has been at data at present, data at motion, how that's been encrypted, and using the security key vault, how to store the data in a security fashion. And lastly, again, about like how the identity access management plays a vital role in terms of providing the user roles, personas, and also what are the privileges for each of these personas. Basically, all this actually the capabilities are part of this platform as an inbuilt, right? On top of that, how we develop that application is where actually you see, as I mentioned before, for the manufacturing industry value chain, how we develop this product, start from design, source, make and sell, and lastly service, right? And yeah, who are all the personas that they can use, right? It could be business users, or it could be third parties users, or it could be some sort of like developers or customers. Based on their needs, the platform can have that the tailored needs that serve that the functionality of that particular user or consumer of the platform. So and lastly, what you see at the southbound interface is basically it's all you take almost all the products, the endpoint solutions or products or tools. We do have the ready-made integration connectors for almost all the tools out there in the market. If ever there is not an out-of-the-box integration connector, we use the bespoke connector to just develop using the integration hub to connect to that system and get that unified system of record. So basically, getting the data from different sources and creating a unified system of record, that is actually the wonder of ServiceNow. In terms of like stitching the product and trying to like avoid the white space and gray space by cascading that point system A to system B and get the data to ServiceNow platform and provide a single source of truth. So this is how the platform speech basically from ServiceNow. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, next slide. Okay, so today's agenda is like we are going to like talk about and deep dive about like what's there on the operational technology and how ServiceNow uses operational technology to like provide the value-added services to the customer in terms of the manufacturing customers whoever uses this OTN, right? So as I mentioned before, these are some of the downturn issues. For example, that could be an if our with the rise of Industry 4.0, there needs to be like a lot of proactive measures that needs to be happen in terms of more reactive maintenance to try to avoid the downtime. That's almost every manufacturing company or non-manufacturing company, they always want to like improve the productivity, right? And I try to cut down the cost and increase the revenue stream, right? So This is what actually the ambition for almost all the industry. That's the KPI. So how we can do that using the OTM, and again, how we can protect against the cyber attacks in a proactive fashion, and also try to minimize the human error, because the human error is one of the biggest challenges for any manufacturing industry. It's because of the more of like a low skilled labor workforce, which right, actually the millennial and Gen Z workers are more addicted to IT gadgets and mobile phones. They don't want to like do this menial job in terms of like all the blue collar job. So that's become a bigger challenge for the manufacturing industry. And again, the skilled workforce is getting diminished day by day, right? And there is a statistic says that by 2030, almost like 60 to 70% of the workforce are going to be get automated, and there won't be like much humans in the factory floor to do all the jobs. And that would be like control tower. They would do monitor from the white collar job, right? And again, how they try to reduce the cost as much as possible, right? And these are some of the statistics. As I mentioned before, manufacturing industry is the second largest industry that's been getting attacked because of the great push for digitization. And again, if there is a downtime happens for any assets, that could be average cost of around 250 to 700K. And I think this numbers even may go up, depends on the scalability of that the production, and also the volume of that the goods they produce every day. And what you see, the 60% of the data breach is happening at the SCADA level, because SCADA is actually an IT machine that sits in the OT network, and intruders or bad attackers try to like intrude the system via the SCADA network, which is the field network or industrial network in the OT landscape, basically. Right. Next slide, please. Great. So this is the slide I would like to pitch and emphasize. Like, so what we see here are probably any manufacturing plant personas. See, this is a tip of iceberg, basically. So they see only the very the superficial level of the assets, and also their connections and relationships. But underneath that, actually, there is a lot of dependencies which is not visible to the factory floor personas, basically. So that is always a saying, right? You can't secure your assets unless you have the better visibility of your entire the technology, the OT or assets landscape, basically. So that's how ServiceNow plays a pivotal role in terms of like identifying each and nook and corner of that the device, where it does where it's been located, and what's the heartbeat status of it, and what's the operational behavior, and how regularly that's been get communicated with that peers, be it HMI, SCADA, or whatever it may be, and getting that transactional data and churn it out the data using service graph connected to send it to CMDB to get it all ingested and stored in as a CI records, basically. So that's how ServiceNow helps to like understand about the entirety of the level 0 to level 4 and 5 process. If you look at the Purdue model landscape, right? And yeah, so these are some of the challenges, like lack of visibility, more manual process, and more security risks and vulnerabilities. Postures are so high, and again, workforce challenges. How we can tackle that is in using ServiceNow platform. That's what we are going to see now. Yeah. Next slide. Okay. So this is actually, I would like to just cover up in a very high level. Anyway, we're going to show the demo, which is going to be exhaustive functionality. You can see in a short runway time. Start with the function foundation, basically. The foundation is nothing but actually, first we need to discover the assets using some sort of like discovery source and discovery tool. So in this case, actually, it could be any third-party integration product, like you can name it like Tenable, CrowdStrike, Microsoft Defender, or it could be like Clarity, Nazomi. You can name any of this well-renowned the product as a discovery tool there in the market. They just go and do the passive scanning or passive monitoring with the eavesdropping mode and try to like get the data by means of sniffing. And once the data that's been collected, that's been sent to the ServiceNow platform, and we create a digital inventory of records using our CMDB, and also with the connection entities and relationships, basically, right? With all the dependency view, that is called, we call it as a digital twin view of the entire the connection and relationship landscape. And again, for that particular assets, you created a very robust inventory of records. But I would like to understand what's happening there, and is there any security issues or vulnerability response that my devices are more prone to vulnerability? How you can understand that? So that's using the VR connector to ingest the data and correlate the data for the specific assets, and we identify what could be the potential threat for that any specific device. Either it could be some sort of like firmware updates not being properly done, or any security patches that has been missed for a long time, or any end of life support for some of the operating systems that use in the factory, the network, basically maybe Windows NT, for instance, you can take that as an end of life support. If there is an security post issue happens, there is no way they have to replace that, right? And that becomes a downtime for them. And again, lastly, the service management piece. The service management is not only very much attached to the IT industry, but for OT industry, that is very, very much needed, because availability is the key use case or key KPI for any factory automation. Because if ever a PLC goes down, that has a bigger impact on controlling different OT control modules and RTU systems, and as well as the field devices. And that becomes a bigger impact. So that's why they need to understand the availability of that particular device and how they can triage, remediate, and put a resolution fix and keep this uptime of the assets all the time to improve the OEE numbers. Right. Next slide. So what you see here is basically, this is basically the Purdue model that has been universally adopted across any of the OT control or industrial control systems. Basically, start with the level 0. That is where actually all the field devices located, which does all the mechanical and electromechanical job, like cobot, moving from point A to point B to locate, dislocate the goods or whatever it may be. And that's been controlled by a PLC. And how the PLC got the controls delegate from SCADA or HMI server, that's become a thermostat for any plant personnel to just go and control the speed of RPM or velocity, or it could be on or switch on of all these devices that needs to be controlled via this PLC. So that's why HMI will be heavily used, and SCADA server collects the data and create an log analytics. Basically, Historian has the log analytics, but SCADA also does some sort of like supervisory mechanism in terms of identifying what are exactly the real-time situations and scenarios. And again, these are all the IT gadgets. Basically, the engineering workstation basically has the schematic diagram of the entire the plant floor in terms of like having the CAM based the diagrams with all the data overlay, the data points overlay on top of that CAD CAM. And again, the IO server. These are all some of the IT gadgets basically, but sits with the OT network. That is the CAD. Suppose it's in an IT scenario, even discovery tool like SCCM, it could be some sort of a Qualys or Rapid7. They can just even go on identify and discover this device. But this is an OT network. Availability is the the requirement for any factory personnel. If ever they try to like just probe the device or just try to like do the scanning in terms of active scanning, that becomes performance bottleneck for that particular device to like respond back to that request instead of doing their own job, right? So that is where actually always that is keep it in mind. It should be always a passive scanning, and with using the span port mirroring, how we can just get the communication that's been without any intrusion of this network, right? And what you see here, the DMZ layer, this is the air gap between the IT and OT system. And what you see from this, all the IT level devices like ERP systems, all your software applications, enterprise application calls running the level 4 and 5. So why we show this Purdue model is, we taken the same Purdue model and created the structure within ServiceNow CMDB. And what you see here, actually, the configuration is virtually has been configured in ServiceNow CMDB. For any plant personnel, they can easily correlate and understand. This is how actually the Purdue model looks like, and CMDB has the same structure. So it's easy for them to like connect back, right? So I'll show you in the demo scenario quite soon how that happens. And with ServiceNow, that it can be handled in entirety, both IT and OT side of the world. Yeah. Next slide. Next slide, please. Sorry. Okay. Let me start with the demo scenario. I think the slides are done. Maybe I can just open up to show you my the demo. Yeah, just give me a second. Hope you all can see my the portal window. Is that visible?
Yes, Soma.
Yes, Soma.
Okay, great. So for today's demo, right, the demo for the operational technology manager, I would like to just have the demo scenario using 4 different personas, basically. Start with the production engineer. So who has the KPI in terms of the roles and responsibilities? He needs to he's the responsible guy for all the OEE numbers and also the uptime of all the assets. If ever there is an assets go down in a production line or any sort of what you call the assembly line, so that his KPI has been directly impacted, and he is the persona that needs to go and look at the issue and rectify the issue and keep that in place within the stipulated time, right? So that's what his key roles and responsibilities. That's where the plant production engineer or the line supervisor, you can name it. In different industry, there is a different name. Yeah, so he's at a very little bit of low level. And the next persona that I'm going to introduce is he's the site supervisor, basically. Or it could be some cases, it could be like a site manager, or it could be like a line supervisor, you can name it anything. So he is more interested of each of the sites, there is no such significant anomalies or any significant impact on the downtime, right? So because he looks at the very high level umbrella of that bird eye view. So from his point of view, all that based on the sales order, what we just received from the customer, are we on target to just produce the goods and ship to the goods on time? So for that, everything all running in a perfect shape, and there is no anomaly or some sort of any rubbing situation happens there in the factory floor. And thirdly,
so sorry to interrupt, Soma, I'm not able to see the personas in the screen right now.
Okay, so personas, let's just a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
So there is one more or 2 more persona, which is Jill. Jill is basically the plant cybersecurity officer. She is actually more tangible towards all the proactive measures on the vulnerabilities, security ops, and any security compliance and so on, so right. And lastly, there is one more folk, which is Robert. Actually, he is the head of manufacturing operations. He always looks at the commercial numbers and OE numbers, and also the just mapping of the sales goods with the delivered the capacity based on the resource planning. All these things actually is actually very keen to know about, right? So with this, all the 4 personas that's been there in the plant floor, every day they have a firefighting and kind of the challenges they need to encounter on a day-to-day life in terms of this Dale has to look at yes, actually with this system probably there is no mobility of any devices. He has very limited visibility across the production landscape, and whenever there is an issue happens, it's more of reactive maintenance for them rather than it's more of proactive maintenance. So he needs to encounter the issue and overcome the challenge. For Troy, actually, he don't have any sort of centralized view for plant operations, basically, in which actually he needs to have a central dashboard from the control tower. He need to look at all the different sites, and also the different for the sites actually what are the number of assets and what is the condition for all the assets basically on the production floor. And for the plant cybersecurity officer, basically she needs to have the proper visibility of the vulnerabilities, and how if ever there is a vulnerability happens, she needs to anticipate and try to rectify as soon as possible before even the vulnerability is going to impact as part of the downside operations, right? So yeah, how that can be tackled within ServiceNow, that's what actually $1 million question we are going to show you in the demo, right? So I take this first persona, Dale Baxter, right? So the Dale Baxter is actually, he needs to understand that what exactly that the OT, the factory floor, the landscape looks like by having the different devices and also the different assets, how that's been connected with each other, and what's the condition and operational behavior of it, basically. Say, as I mentioned, the Purdue model, we've taken this Purdue model. This is actually one of the classification of the Purdue model here. Where you see here is SCADA server as part of the downstream process that connects to a PLC. When I say connects to a PLC, that actually pushes the control to the PLC. That PLC just push the control and delegates to the OT control modules, right? So that OT control module will take the job and pass it to the field devices or operating equipments to do the job at a regular interval at a stipulated time, right? Whereas actually the SCADA server that needs to also like have the upstream process of like managing some of the SCADA clients as part of the distributed control system, right? And also it needs to communicate to the EWS engineering workstation to feed the data in terms of overlaying that the data points or the schematic diagram to understand from the taxonomy view of that particular equipment. Either it could be HVAC or ACMV or it would be whatever you can name it, right? All the complicated systems basically. And as part of the historian, it collects the data and using for log analytics basically, and that's how the SCADA server sends the data to the historian as well. And this will be detected by an intrusion detection system, as I mentioned before, which we are using some sort of like third-party integration services. Why we use a third-party integration services? Because they are very much established and they are actually like trying to like normalize across the different industrial protocols. Either it could be BACnet, Profinet, IO servers, or it could be like yeah, you can name it, because each of the OEM, right, Siemens, Schneider, ABB has their own proprietary protocols. How they can normalize using this intrusion detection system. That's why actually we use the third-party integration services, right? Okay, now I quickly just jump into this. For Dale Baxter, he needs to understand about what are the different OT assets basically, and for that OT assets, what's actually the how the digital twin view and the service dependency view looks like, right? To understand for this PLC, how it's connected to a control module, and it as well as it's connected to back to an down upstream process like EWS or HMI or so and so, right? So you can see all this actually OT assets basically. What is the OT asset and what's the OT asset type, the IP address, manufacturer, who is the OEM that manufactured this particular asset basically, and the model number, description, Purdue level. Purdue level, as I show you that level 0, 1, 2, 3, that's the Purdue level, and which zone it belongs to, because for factory floor, there could be different zones basically that's been triangulated, how that the zone can be configured, and site, which site it is also, like it's a London site or Atlanta site, whatever it may be, and what's the asset criticality of each asset, assets basically. It's this is a very key imperative need for any plant personnel to understand what's the criticality of that particular assets, right? If it's most critical, then they need to like put more attention towards it, right? To like fix the issue before any anomaly situation happens. That's the case basically. And what's the discovery source, and what's the most recent discovery first discovered and everything. So now what I'm going to do is like I just drill down to one particular asset. Basically, I take the PLC as a classic example, and you see this is the form view. This is the list view. You can see all the list of type of devices basically listed down. This is the form view. It gives you the granular level of details about that particular assets basically. In this case, a PLC, that's what's the Purdue level, what's asset criticality, what side it belongs to, the company, the model number, hardware version, everything, MAC address, everything you can just discover as part of the discovery source. And what you see here is the activity stream. If ever there is a change happens, for example, when this asset has been firstly discovered, and from the discovery time to now, what are the changes that's been reflected in terms of any changes, any firmware updates, or any new upgrades as part of the security patches, or any other inventory change, all the change management, everything will be captured as part of the activity stream here, right? And you can see all the equipment model entities, which entity it belongs to, and also the network adapters, which give you that IP address basically, and also the MAC address, serial number, everything you can see as part of the granular level details. What I'm going to do is like for this PLC, I'm going to open up the digital twin view. So this digital twin view gives you that the graphical representation of like how the PLC is connected to the different the production line. Basically, which production line it belongs to. So in this case, it's an assembly line. Some assembly line called LHR manufacturing assembly line. For that LHR manufacturing assembly line, what are the other the parallel process or the distributed process basically, right? that connects back to. Like for this case, assembly line, it's actually the downstream process of a manufacturing zone, and that manufacturing zone has the storage area and also the cutting line, basically. Because if you look at the assembly line, right? So first one actually does some sort of like some job, like maybe a cutting process. Second one is the molding process. Third one is the maybe like packaging process. So this is how the assembly line looks like in the manufacturing, typical manufacturing industry process. And that's how we model here the entire production flow process. And the good part, what you see here is actually, whenever there is a vulnerability that has been identified part for the particular PLC, that has been identified and thrown in a real-time fashion to understand. This is what the CVE basically, right? You know, right? Based on the NIST standards, it is the common vulnerabilities and exposures. This is what the CVE code. And for the CVE code, is there an incident that's been auto-identified by the machine learning and AI ops? In this case, actually, the machine learning engine tried to triangulate and identify this PLC has been misconfigured after the service. Either it could be some data patterns feed by some manual incident owners, or this picks up based on the base articles, right? So the data source could be from anything, either manual source or it could be from the knowledge base article, right? So that's how the machine learning is smart enough to like pick it up the incident basically. And for that incident, is there any vulnerabilities or change management that's already tagged from an incident owner or incident manager? That's all gets captured here. So this is where actually the powerfulness of the inventory of records that's been correlated not only for the vulnerabilities, for the incidents, what are the affected CIs. And moreover, I can show you the details basically. If ever this PLC has an issue, and what would be the potential impact on the assembly line, right? So in this case, if PLC has issue, this is the assembly line, definitely has some downtime or probably some low threshold in terms of the performance bottleneck. And that actually affects the sensor basically. And these are some of the manual endpoints, all gets impacted, right? And basically for that associated CI, what are the incidents that's been created, right? Either it could be the machine learning AI ops, or basically using that any incident that has been captured from a plant persona, right? So all this can be just mapped here. And again, the vulnerable items, basically, what are the different vulnerable items? That's been just, sorry for that. Yeah, so what are the vulnerable items that's been tagged for this particular incident? And lastly, what are the related services? So if you click on related services, it will highlight it in yellow, basically, right? Like what's the storage line, assembly line, has some impact. This is how actually you can just easily navigate and identify and pick it up, right? Sorry. Yeah. Now going back to the next persona. So this is how the day-to-day life looks for any the production line supervisor basically. And looking at the site supervisor level, he needs to understand from the site level perspective, right? For different sites, what are all the you can just drill down to that specific site and understand what's happening with that particular site. Take for example London site. So what are the new OT assets discovered within a recent 7 days? This can be configured like as in a time series manner. You can just push it to like later date of like even 10 to 15 days, or it could be even 1 month, right? And again, what are the inactive assets that's been discovered, but these assets are still inactive, not in a full operational mode? And what are the vulnerable items that's associated with the particular assets? And lastly, what are the OT tasks in terms of incidents that's been identified? And the good part here is actually, what you see here is the OT vulnerabilities overview. As I mentioned before, the machine learning model, right? Actually, the machine learning, the AI ops, the engine, basically try to like identify that issue based on the flooded incidents that received from the data that's from the discovery source, and try to like classify, categorize, prioritize, and even try to like put that severity of the incident based on the critical, high, low, medium, and trivial, right? So this is very much important for any industrial control system engineer to attack that most severe incident first. and to avoid that the bigger impact rather than just go and focus on some trivial matters, right? So this is very much important for any the plant personas, and they can also understand about like what are the vulnerable items and what state it is in. Either it could be waiting for implementation or in under review, or it's still in open state, or resolved, or under investigation. This is the entire workflow scenario. Based on that, the particular status, it gets captured and yeah, stated over here. And again, what are the different unclassed? Unclassed assets basically means if suppose example, there are a few asset types, right? Like PLC, RTO, DCS, HMI, so on and so. If ever the OT device that's not been identified as a certain asset type, that will be tagged as a parent class, which is like the operational technology, the base class itself. So that's how the assets can be unclassed and still can be managed within ServiceNow CMDB. That's the beauty part of it. And again, what are the vulnerable items? What are them are unmapped and assets by category basically. How many supervisory system, control system, field devices, and so on. So all you can see here, and OT assets by Purdue level from 0 to 3.5, and OT assets by type. What are the different asset type? And this is very, very important thing. OT assets by manufacturer. For any the shop floor or the factory floor, right? They need to, because that will be mix and match of different OEM vendors. Something they use Siemens, Schneider, ABB, Mitsubishi, Rockwell, Honeywell. So many of the different vendors, OEM vendors, right? So they need to have that perfect inventory and categorization of like what's the set of that OEM device type and from which manufacturer it basically. Because this is very much important. If our Siemens PLC goes down, right? So they should have that the knowledge of the inventory in the stockpile. They need to understand whether this asset is already there in the warehouse or that needs to be rise with the purchase order, get the procurement done. That's become an insane amount of time for that particular matter. So that's why they need to understand about what are the potential vulnerable items or any anomaly items that can be easily ripped and replaced. We do have any enough stockpile in our warehouse. So that's why they need to understand that. And assets by criticality, lastly, right? And so for this guy, Troy Morton, which is like a site supervisor, he needs to understand by launching this interactive analytics based on the OT asset manufacturer, what are the assets criticality and how much is the count basically. So what you see here is in the color code. The different, as I mentioned, these are the different OEM vendor type has their devices and how many of the counts basically, and they are in which stage. For example, less critical, most critical, highly critical, all that's been categorized, right? So that's one of the thing. And again, they can also understand based on the either what actually is done something like a matrix view, right? So that in the matrix view, they can also identify how many number of assets which is most critical in the state. I can click it down here and understand and going to triangulate that particular assets instead of I spending my time looking over all the assets basically. And it gets grouped by OT assets basically over here. And that's why you can see all the Cisco, Acer, ABB, all the different types of vendors, right? So this is how easily they can filter and navigate to that pinpointed issues basically. Yeah. And again, for this guy, what you see here is the Purdue model. The Purdue model is actually the level 0 to level 4 and 5, right? Which is the industry stacked automation layer. But there is another model called ISA 95 model. This ISA 95 model is basically, ISA means like International Society of Automation. Basically for any corporate HQs, right? Any corporate companies, right? They would have the operations across the zones and regions and also the different countries, or it could be different geographies. So they need to understand from the HQ perspective, if ever there is a sales order comes into their the plate, so they need to understand based on the sales order, which factory or which particular site has this production capacity, manpower capacity, resource planning, or maybe supply chain enablement. All these things has to be properly identified and modeled as part of the production process. And that's why this ISA 95 model is a very key imperative need for any the global enterprise companies, right? So that's why you can see here from the top-down view, there's a London site basically. Under the London site, the manufacturing line, packaging line, storage line all get configured. And under the manufacturing line, this is a finishing line, cutting line, and assembly line. That's as part of the downstream process. That actually you can see here the relationship, right? Contains element of, means like for this manufacturing line contains an assembly line, a cutting line, and finishing line. And this manufacturing, how the flow looks like, then once the manufacturing is done, once the finishing is done, it goes to the cutting line and it goes to the assembly line, right? So this is how it's been modeled here, right? Similarly, for the packaging area, package 1, 2, 3, and some how that's interconnected with each other with the relationships, and again the storage area. So this is very much useful for any enterprise company that they would like to just have that modeling view of the production process, basically. Right. Okay. I think. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I think we are just about time closure. So we need to take few of the questions. We have got some good set of questions, Soma, and I think I hope you covered the entire thing, right? The demo part of it. So can we quickly take a couple of questions which has come through?
Sure, definitely. Yeah. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thanks. So I tried to, because in the interest of time, I just put a couple of questions together. So the question have come in like this: how are there any existing or new manufacturing specific CMDB classes available? And also, how do you discover OT asserts while they get stored in CMDB?
Right, that's a great question. So for the manufacturing, the OT classes, right? So it's already as part of our Tokyo release. We already have introduced 20 plus classes, basically from the level 0, level 1. Level 0 is not there, right? Because level 0 is more of like an industrial equipment or field devices that will be covered with the IoT sensors. But from level 1 to level 4 and 5, we have that OT class models. So that's all dedicated class models, classes actually created as part of the OT package or operational technology package. And maybe I can share that information later on, how that the parent class and the child class looks like for under the supervisory system, control system, and field devices. And that's part of the parent class called operational technology, right? So there are 20 plus classes already there, and we are going to enhance the numbers by adding more classes for the level 0 as well, right? So that's all. And second thing, your question is like, what's the next question? Sorry, I forgot that.
So this is more about how do you discover OT assets, right?
Great. Right. Yeah. So great. So for the discovery source, right? ServiceNow is not into the play of like having the native discovery engine, like what we have it for IT operations management. We use the mid server to discover the devices. But for the OT, since the protocols are proprietary standards and the communication protocols, so that's actually mix and match of different heterogeneous layers, right? So that's why we would like to rely on third-party services like something like Tenable, Microsoft Defender, or Clarity, Nozomi, and so on. And we have the ready-made integration connectors for all of that, the big list of the third-party integration services. And there is no need to like reinvent the wheel to have the hookup integration between the ServiceNow to the particular third-party services. Yeah.
Thanks, Soma, for that. A quick question to Bharat for you. Using ServiceNow, how we can improve the order cycle management activities? Very specific question to one of the use cases, I think. So would you like to take it?
Yes. Thanks, Santosh. Yeah, it's a great question. So, as part of even one of our customer, came to us, with a similar kind of challenge, like, as part of enhancing, customer experiences, right? So we have developed a solution around how to, optimize the order to cash optimization kind of scenario. Like in this particular scenario, a solution to cover how to improve the order cycle management activities like order inquiries, order cancellations, or order requisitions, or maybe order returns, etc., which needs a continuous connection between the end customers and back office operations, either by using, omni-channel capabilities of ServiceNow, like emails, phone calls, chat, social media handles like Twitter and Facebook. We have solution around that.
Okay. Thank you. So we are just about time. So I think we will not be able to cover all the set of questions. So I would like to take and thank all the participants for asking these questions. We will come back to you with these responses over the mail. But just before we close, I would like to get a quick concluding remark from you, Soma and Bharat. Could you give a quick overview and a concluding remark around it?
Yeah, thanks, Santosh. So as we see, right, actually the trend goes towards like for any because the automation is the key agenda for any of the manufacturing company or even non-manufacturing company. If that automation that needs to be in place, then the next the value levers are like how they can improve the productivity, reduce the cost, and also generate new revenue streams. So that's where actually every manufacturing company or non-manufacturing company looks like in this climate, to be a competitor for their on the race ahead for the competitors, right? So with that in case, so they need to have a better visibility in terms of like keeping the OE numbers at the tip top right numbers, and also keeping the product at the right level. ServiceNow and with the help of Yash Technologies, that could be the right solution, I believe. Yeah.
Thanks so much. Bharat, would you have a quick concluding remark? Yeah.
Like I mentioned, right, with ServiceNow in our workflows, right, especially around manufacturing space, now organizations, can think of how can they, enhance, the experiences of various stakeholders across their enterprise by keeping, ServiceNow as single system of action in middle of their enterprise by integrating ServiceNow their other systems across the enterprise.
Okay. Thanks, Bharat, and thanks, Soma. It was a wonderful session and quite informative, and I believe that a lot of participants would have got a lot of inputs from this. And I would thank all the participants who have joined across the world. Please look out for an email from us with the link